This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Appearing before us for the second hour, we have from Air Canada, Mr. Michael Rousseau, President and Chief Executive Officer, joining us by video conference. Welcome to you, sir. We have Mark Gallardo, Executive Vice President, Revenue and Network Planning, and President Cargo. Welcome. And we have David Rowe, Vice President, Government and Community Relations. We also have from Air Passenger Rights, Dr. Gabor Lukács, President. Welcome to you. Good to have you back, sir. We'll begin our line of questioning today with Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my questions will all be directed towards you, Mr. Rousseau. I just want to, first of all, level set and make sure that Canadians are aware of the actions that Air Canada has taken. And it's my understanding that on December 4th, you announced that your basic fare would no longer include carry-on luggage. Is that correct? Starting January 3rd.
Thank you for the question. That is correct for just the North American sun markets.
Thank you for that. And that if someone wanted to have a carry-on, they could either upgrade to a higher fare or they could pay a $35 fee. Is that correct as well?
Well, pay a $35 fee to check it in. Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. And so I understand, and your predecessors here at WestJet made an excellent point of debundling the various elements, and that makes sense to me. But here's my fear: is that instead of those dollars going back to those folks who want to travel without a carry-on, that it will just go to Air Canada's bottom line. So I'm hoping you could assure Canadians and assure the Transport Committee members that the difference, or that delta, that $35 difference in fee, will result in your fees dropping on your basic tickets to North American and Sun destinations by $35 on average. And if not, why not?
Again, thank you for the question. That's going to be a function of the competitive marketplace that we operate in. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we have three very good competitors in Flair, WestJet, and Porter. And so the basic fares are typically, now that they're completely comparable, they'll be also priced probably comparably as well. And again, we'll see how the market reacts with four competitors offering the same product in a very transparent fashion. And I cannot put forward any type of potential price changes, because that's against the law for me to do that, frankly. But the market will determine that, and now the market is more competitive.
But clearly, you have done internal work which would show the revenue that will be generated by charging basic ticket fares $35 to check a carry-on item. I would remind you, sir, that this is not just a kangaroo court. This is Parliament here, and we have the ability to compel any document that we require. So I would ask you again, what will be the revenue generated? You've done these calculations. What will be the revenue generated by the carry-on fee?
I don't have, thank you again for the question. I don't have that information. I can certainly refer it to Mark Gallardo, our EVP of Network and Revenue Management, and to provide a little more detail. But certainly, some of the information that you may ask for will be confidential, commercially sensitive. But we are certainly willing to work with the committee to provide the information, if not today, if it's not commercially sensitive, certainly shortly after the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that. And this committee does have the ability to keep information confidential if it so deems to. So that might be a solution, but would definitely like that. And then I'd like to just sort of flip back to the pricing again. I know as well that as a major corporation, $1 billion corporation, you would have done pricing analysis, economic analysis as to what the introduction of a carry-on fee would do to pricing. And I don't think you just wake up in the morning and say, this is the price of the flight from Vancouver to Winnipeg. So what WestJet told us that the difference between their ultra basic and their basic was 14%. What will be the difference between the flight costs on average on January 2nd and January 3rd?
Again, thank you for the question. It's going to be a function of the competitive forces, but possibly Mark Gallardo can provide a little more detail on that type of question if I can defer that to him.
Sure. The work that we did is to assess how to make sure that Air Canada is very competitive in the domestic market. And our view was that offering this product would make Air Canada competitive and therefore would, obviously help its revenue streams in being competitive. That's the assessment that we did, and we deemed that being uncompetitive was not a good outcome for Air Canada.
So Mr. Gallardo, I think you might have given away the plot a little bit there. You just said that the reason why you put in a fee or removed carry-on baggage as part of a basic fare was to increase revenue. That's the why you've done this?
I said we did that to remain competitive with changing market forces in domestic Canada.
I think if we check the answer, it might say a little bit different than that, but that's fine. I would then ask for unanimous consent for a motion asking Air Canada for documents with respect to the revenue increase from the removal of carry-on items from their basic fare, as well as their pricing, as the impact on pricing. Do I have UC for that, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. We're going to stop the time there. Yes, Mr. Badaway.
If he's going to ask for that from Air Canada, he asks for that for all the carriers.
So I don't have UC then?
Not for that one, but if you include all the air carriers, you can have all the UC you want.
Sure. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to ask for all documentation relating to the revenues generated from the payment of carry-on baggage or the projected income that Air Canada has calculated. Do I have unanimous consent? Seeing no objection, so carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Your time is up. Thank you.
Now, will this $35 charge apply to like a really large backpack if somebody's going on a hiking trip?
Again, I think that will be up to the gate agent to make that decision. But I think we have specifications as to size.
Right.
And
so let me put it this way then. So I say I'm planning on taking a trip and I'd like to do some hiking. So I bring some shoes and whatever, and I plan on putting it underneath the seat. So I plan on bringing it on as my personal item and experiencing no cost associated with that. But I arrive and I check in and the gate agent says, actually, it's too big to go under your seat, even though, I could probably get it in there. So they're telling me that it's actually carry-on baggage. What will I be charged at the airport to put it in the overhead compartment?
Well, we believe, thank you for the question. We believe our gate agents will be reasonable in the circumstances.
Do you know the amount that it'll cost, though?
I believe at gate it will be $65.
My question is going to be for the CEO of Air Canada, Mr. Rousseau. Mr. Rousseau, we know that government regulations, fees, and taxes overall in Canada carry a big weight on the airlines' operations in Canada. This is one of the reasons why it's more expensive to fly in Canada than other countries. And we heard this during our study of airline competition. And we also heard that here today. Would you agree that when governments dump higher taxes and fees onto airlines, that has a consequence of raising the prices of tickets on the average traveler?
Thank you for your question. I absolutely agree with that statement. It also potentially provides barriers to entry for new entrants.
And we also heard today that this government's airline taxes, rents, and fees are actually out of control. And we heard evidence that it's 30% of the actual domestic fare is on government fees. Isn't it true that other countries avoid flying through Canada just to avoid the high, out of control government fees?
Thank you for the question. That may be true. I don't have evidence of that, but that would be a logical conclusion to the high cost structure we have here in Canada.
We heard that here today, but thank you for giving that forthright answer. So this if we look at this government's taxes and fees and regulations, like the carbon tax, it's clear that this is largely responsible for why Canadians pay more to travel than in other countries to travel in Canada.
Again, thank you for the question. It's a combination of factors. It's one, our business model is a user pay model, as I mentioned before. So, for example, airports have to charge customers a AIF to build a capital fund to build infrastructure. In other countries, that's funded differently. So there's a combination of taxes from the government of Canada and from the fact that we have a unique model here, a user pay model.
How much carbon taxes does Air Canada pay in 2024?
Thank you for the question. That's a very good question. I wish I had the answer, but I can certainly provide it post this meeting.
Okay. We heard from WestJet that they paid 10 million, and we heard that they'll likely pay in excess of 100 million by 2028. Can you give us an idea of what the impact of, say, for example, and you're a much larger airline than WestJet, is that not correct?
Yes, WestJet's not public, so I don't have their information, but before in 2019, we were roughly 3.5 times their size.
Okay. So could you explain what, if WestJet is potentially paying in excess of 100 million by 2028, I would assume that yours would be around 300 million. Can you explain what a carbon tax cost of that would have, the impact that would have on the cost of flights for average Canadians?
Well, again, thank you for the question. And we fly roughly 50 million customers a year. And so that would increase the cost by roughly $6 or $7.
Okay, so essentially the increase in the carbon tax would be passed on to customers who would pay higher fares.
I mean, that would be, that would be a logical assumption to make.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. It's 4 minutes in. I'll now pass the floor to Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I'd like to move a motion that at the conclusion of the meetings of Air Canada's plan to impose carry-on baggage fees, that the committee expand the study by an additional 3 meetings with a focus on how government policy has increased the cost of air travel, and produce a final report for the study that includes proposed areas where these fees can be reduced with the intention of lowering costs Canadians pay for airfare. Sub B, report to the House its recommendations that the government undertake a review of all federal fees, taxes, and charges applied to airlines and airports, and that the review include proposed areas where the fees can be reduced with the intention of lowering costs Canadians pay for airfare within 30 days, and that clause of the motion be reported to the House at the earliest opportunity following the adoption of this motion. We have it translated, and it should be arriving
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
in your email.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Vancouver on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have a speaking list already for this motion? Can I be on it if not?
We do not, Mr. Vancouverden, but what we are going to do is probably suspend to ensure that we can all get a copy of this, and then members can determine how we'd like to proceed.
Can I speak before we do that?
I'm gonna let Mr. Lawrence finish, and then from there I'll turn the floor to Mr. Badaway, who had his hand up first, and then if it's the will of the committee, I think we'll probably suspend so that we can discuss this offline, and then come back and see if we'd like to handle this today or whether we want to handle this perhaps at another date. So I'll let you finish, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. As this is in keeping with our study today, and I think we've heard some compelling evidence. But as actually, if I'm not telling tales out of school, myself and Mr. Badaway were discussing the issues and the need to sort of dig down deeper. And I think the additional 3 meetings would give us the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Badaway.
with all due respect to the time that we have left with the witnesses, which are very valuable, and it was asked by Mr. Lawrence in the first place, if we can actually have this in writing and deal with it at the next meeting. I know some of the questions that I have are going to drive towards this. So I would ask Mr. Lawrence if we can have this, we can deal with it at the next meeting under a UC motion.
Mr. Badaway, it is in writing and it is of course translated, so it is available for you to review. If we want 2 minutes, we would like to have a vote today. If you have the votes to adjourn it, you have the votes to adjourn it for another day. That's fine, but we would like to have this vote and dealt with today.
Okay, colleagues, what
Mr.
we'll
Chair,
do is...
prior to suspending,
Yes, Mr. Vancouverton.
I think it's very important that we complete this meeting. I have questions for the witnesses, and I would move to adjourn debate on this for now and come back to it at another date. Dilatory motion, I believe.
Okay, so we'll go to a vote. Madam Clerk. The motion is to adjourn debate.
Mr. Badaway,
Yes.
Mr. Van Coverden,
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Iacono,
Oh, yes, en micro.
Mr. Iacono, may I get your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
No.
Dr. Lewis,
No.
Mr. Muse,
No.
Mr. Viss. Mr. Viss, could you hear us? You can do a sign of thumbs up or thumbs down for telling which vote you're doing.
I hope you can hear it. I don't know if you can.
Mr. Viss, could you hear us?
Oh, come on.
Monsieur Barcelo Duval,
Wait.
Miss Dance? Yes. 7 yeas, 3 nays.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I believe that was the end of the time that you had, Mr. Lawrence. So I'll